Now, that was a lovely sound effect you had going on there, Mark. I'm Mark Lamarr, sitting in
on
Jonathan
Radio
Ross.
4.
I'm Mark... let me do it again. Let's pretend it's not live. And we've recorded it, and let's go take two.
Right.
I'm Mark Lamarr. Do you want to do it again?
Okay.
I'm Mark Lamarr. Actually, there's no point in recording something and doing it again, is there? I'm Mark Lamarr. I don't know how many times I've got to say this before it sinks into the nation of Britain. I'm Mark Lamarr. Mark Steele is playing some sort of jungle drums on some old cups of tea. Tamsin Outhwaite, Sergeant Joe McDonough from Red Cap is with me, and that was Magazine with Shot by Both Sides, which couldn't have been a more fitting link to the programme Red Cap, if indeed you were shot by both sides in it. Henry Naylor from Parsons and Naylor's Pull-Out section here on Radio 2 has also joined us in the studio. This will sound rude, for no good reason. You're not plugging anything, which
no, I'm not, yeah.
Sweet. And Jo Brand will be in, I suspect, the next 20 minutes or so. Also not plugging anything. I just thought it would be a nice get-together at the beginning. No, I'm not saying it about you.
I didn't come on to plug.
No, I know you didn't. I'm just saying that I can't say. And Henry, you've got an exciting new...
Oh, I see. Sorry, I'm just learning about the radio.
That's
thing.
all.
Thanks, Mark.
Hey, if you're coming to learn, this is the place, baby.
I am. I'm just watching and learning.
It's like a play school. Okay, I've got the notes in front of me about you.
Have you?
And again, we're friends, and it'll be the same with Joe. What was the first thing you ever did on television? I was just thinking, maybe it's something that we could all think about. What was the first thing you ever did on television? Because it'll be embarrassing and say, no one would ever have seen it. What was it with you?
Was it my ads?
Oh, it probably was. Everyone would have seen it. You're probably looking at Henry and thinking, I know him from somewhere.
Yeah. I get that.
Do you know what it's from?
Can you remember the line?
Can you remember the line?
It was Rowan Atkinson's partner in the Barclaycard adverts.
No, my first time. Oh, my God, it was... Oh, God,
you did such an exciting... I meet him at last. You did it like that.
It's you.
Oh, it's like doing exams, isn't it? Look, can you remember what you did before? It was that carpet one. It was a burning carpet, and it was like, I don't know, something like he's swapping his old credit card to Barclaycard, boff.
Oh, you believed in it then?
I acted it with conviction, Mark. That's called acting.
I remember there was a line in it, the Tuareg tribesman, wasn't there? That was in it.
Yeah, and they actually, I had a mate who actually translated it. We did it in a carpet shop.
Henry, I know you're excited, but could you try and keep a steady distance from the mic, because you've been on and off it, you've been blasting my eardrums, and I've been barely able to hear you.
Yes, I'm sorry, Mark. But no, he translated it, this mate of mine.
Not that distance, though, that one's not right.
It's fine. I'm over here. Is that good?
What you did that thing that like Matt Monroe does when they pull the mic away when they sing something loud. You went right over it and you shouted, so it sounded exactly the same as when you were there.
Is it right? Am I sounding like Norman Collier to the nation? Am I going like that?
Well, you are now.
Well, I am now. Yeah, obviously. But no,
that's the classic Norman Collier where people do it without actually any of the words.
Yes. How did Norman Collier do it? Come on.
Well, I can't.
Johnny Vaughan. Let's say you're a Norman Collier.
I can't do a Norman Collier, but I would do. I would do exactly the same. But the trick is that occasionally it would be a Naylor. It would be that sort of thing, which I obviously can't do.
Well, apparently in this. But what he said...
that's not bad.
Hey, was that getting better?
It sounds like you're burping.
And he did a chicken impression as well, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
That's pretty good, isn't it? How long did he keep going with that? That's pretty good, to do a busted microphone and a chicken. And I mean, now you would think, blimey, I'll see if I can get through... I've got 10 minutes. I can't do my old material. I'll see if I can bust through that time. But he's 40 years.
Yeah.
Busted microphone and a chicken.
It was like that guy. There's another guy.
It was great on radio, the old busted microphone. I bet it worked.
Well, I bet people were just going, oh, no, we'll have to get the bloke in. It's gone.
I've got under the tunnel. Can't see it, but it feels like we are.
But there was another guy like that, though, that used to hit his head with a biscuit tray. Do you remember him?
That was Shane McGowan at the start of the Pogues.
Do you remember that bloke? And I'll tell you a story about that bloke. I was doing a gig and I was doing something about him. I can't remember exactly what it was about the bloke. Oh, I remember what it was. There's a great story that someone told me. They did a gig with him, and remember he won like Opportunity Knocks 3 times, and he'd go Mule Train. Ha! Do you remember this, Tamsin?
Yeah.
And he'd smack himself on the head with the tray, and it was very funny. Clippity club, clip. But he's smacking himself on the head. And
did Norman Wisdom not do that?
I'm sure it's been done before. Anyway, this bloke was doing the thing, and someone said they'd been to a gig, and he does Mule Train, and he does Rawhide, ha, and he does Legend of Xanadu, ha, and they said, and then that's all the songs with whip noises in. And he hasn't really got, you've got to fill your 20 minutes, you're booked to do a thing. So he did a Beatles medley. And so he would, honestly, he'd go, yesterday, ha! All my troubles seem so, ha! So I was telling this on stage. I was telling this on stage in Croydon. I remember it very specifically. And I said, I can't remember his name. I bet he can't either. And the woman, some woman in the audience went, his name was whatever his name was, and he was my granddad! And she got really angry, and I said, is he still alive? And she said, no, he's dead. And anyone else would have gone, well, let's leave that there. And I said, is it because Firestarter came out? Was he still doing gigs? And she did laugh along. I think it had been quite a while before.
Did they play at the funeral? What would they have played? A version of the...
Mule
Yeah, with a coffin lid going, boom.
Well, you'd have had some horses there, so clibbity-clap, clibbity-clap, clibbity-clapping, right. I never thought I'd be doing Frankie Lane this morning. That's the way things work out. So, Tamsin, what was your first ever television appearance?
It was in a programme called Birth of a Nation, and I was an extra.
Isn't that a Ku Klux Klan film from the 20s?
Yeah.
Well, it was
It wasn't
a
that?
remake of that, obviously.
Okay.
I don't remember much about it, except that it was like Grange Hill. It was the closest I could get to being in Grange Hill, because I wasn't allowed to watch Grange Hill. My dad wouldn't let me watch it.
But was it your dream to be
and
just to watch it?
Well, it was just great. I would love it if I could walk into the living room, turn the telly on, and I could have sat there with the door shut and watched it for the whole half an hour. But no, you'd always have a lounge check during Grange Hill. So I got into this thing called Birth of a Nation. It was a tiny weeny part. I think I shouted one line, and it was a riot in a school, and everyone was jumping over cars and chucking things, and there was fire everywhere. That was my first appearance, and it was blink and gone.
Matt, yours, Mark?
It was a terrible, it was only a terrible programme because people like me were on it, and it was about 1984, I think, and it was a programme called Pyjamarama that used to go out about 11:30 in the London weekend area.
It was the alternative comedy thing, wasn't it?
Yeah. And
As
I
they
was
were called in
really,
those
really
days.
diabolical in it. I would hope that any possible recording of this is...
Was it doing
very-
stand-up?
Yeah.
Isn't it funny, though, how when you look back, you cannot bear to watch your first appearance of it? Like, I can't bear to watch anything the first week of EastEnders.
I didn't watch your last one, so I know you're just linking that into, like...
No.
You would have enjoyed my first appearances, but I couldn't
No.
watch them. That's what you're linking it into. This is Supergrass. That was. Now it's going to be that awful thing. Now people go, "Oh, I bet the best bits you do off air." That was Lenny by Supergrass. You've all made it into something now. People go, "Someone's just told a really filthy joke, or someone's farted and then gone, sorry, missus," that sort of thing, and it was nothing actually.
Well, it's this thing, but it's not very. It's not very interesting. The answer to the question you asked, which was, how do people first get started in comedy? It's really quite tedious,
how do you
and you sort of
in something like that.
you
Or
just
do you
have to
obviously
be-
try it out on your mates?
What I started to do was started making things up that were interesting. There was a thing when I was on the midweek once on Radio 4, and the researcher rang me up just before.
Anecdotes.
Yeah, she said, "Oh, well, how did you first get started?" Because then Libby Purvis can talk to you about that. And
that's a good idea, yeah.
Oh, I don't know. So I thought, well, I'll just sort of make something up as a sort of just joking with the researcher woman who was ringing up. And I said, well, what it was, my dad, you see, he was a diplomat, a well-known diplomat in Poland. And I used to go over to Poland a couple of times a year. And one of the best ways to learn Polish is to learn the jokes. And so one Christmas, they asked me to get up and make a little bit of a speech after him. And, of course, all I knew was these jokes. So I got up and I told 3 or 4 jokes that they went down so well that I was booked to do a regular spot in the lunchtime break at the nearby vodka factory. And I said this to the researcher, and I thought, well, that's the end of that. So then roll forward a week or whatever it is to midweek, and it's sort of like, live on Radio 4 in the morning, and Libby Purvis says, and Mark, you had a most unusual beginning to the world of comedy, didn't you? I said, did I? Oh, Mark's being a little bit modest. Your father was a diplomat in Gdansk or whatever it was. And she reads all this story out, and so I thought, well, I'm going to make things up from there. So every time you do a sort of little interview,
But
and
then
someone
you've got to
says,
remember them.
no,
See,
not
I
really.
can't-
I've made up all sorts of things.
I've done it once.
I told one once, and it got in the local, I can't remember which paper, I think it was in Middlesbrough. So a journalist said, how did you first get started? And I said, well, I was terrified of flying. And I found the only way to relax was to tell jokes to just because I was just in such a state. And one day, one of the stewardesses came past on a shuttle to Dublin, and she heard me telling a joke to some of the other passengers, and she thought, well, they went down so well, the jokes, that I was booked to do a regular slot and calm down the passengers on the London to Dublin shuttle service, and that's how I got started. And of course, they'd print it.
Do you remember when Virgin started? They did used to have acts on.
Yeah. It used to be a way, didn't it? Acts could get sort of like a cheap fare over to... In fact, they'd go for free, wouldn't
Yeah,
they?
that would be. They wouldn't get paid, but they would get up and because what's his name did it? Tony Hawks.
Oh, yeah.
Used to do Maurice Minor and the Majors. Used to do their little spoof songs on the.
That's what you want, isn't it? When
on
the
the fly.
turbulence starts.
What a
Starts a rap.
gig. What a horrible gig.
Because you, of course, I don't mean handed on a plate, but you've got a club at your school that encourages it because you were footlights, weren't you?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, no, we used to... Yeah, in fact, actually, God, our year's done really well, because, like, Sue Perkins was in our year, Ben Miller was in our year, Alexander Armstrong did it. Andy Parsons, of course, myself, and there's a lad called Nick Ball and James Ickes used to do Saturday Live, so it was quite a good time. But Ali G came just after us, so
How was he? He came, didn't he?
yeah.
What was the big year? The big year after, I assume it's the sort of Griff, Rhys Jones, Mel Smith, all that mob, weren't they all?
Well, it was there was the Emma Thompson, Stephen
Yeah.
Fry,
That's what I'm thinking
Hugh
of,
Laurie.
yeah.
That was a big foot.
Yeah.
And they were all well, obviously comics as well, but they're pretty much a real actors set,
Yeah,
aren't they?
God, that's a real special year, isn't it? Not that yours wasn't, but to look back on that and see what.
Yeah, and before that,
how
there was-
widely they've all spread their net.
But the big one was one where they all ended up on Broadway. They had Tim Brooke Taylor, John Cleese,
Of
Graham
course,
Garden, Bill Oddie. It was amazing.
Were they all
cast.
footlight?
Yeah.
But that is, we've mentioned 3 or 4 specific years. There have been a lot of years where you wouldn't know a single member, presumably.
Of course.
No.
And there used to be a thing, I never did it, but there used to be a thing in Edinburgh where all the so-called alternative comics, if I can use the vernacular of the times, would go down to footlights and heckle them off. Which is fair as well.
Exactly.
That's a form of training, then, isn't it? Really? I mean, you've.
So we heckled off by a lot of
No.
comics. That's a terrible training.
They
It's
were
not-
booked
but-
specially, didn't they? Didn't you, Cambridge people would get booked specially at this gig and think, "Oh, right, it was a gig," and then I think it was more cruel than Mark's
Did you ever have
saying.
that?
No, actually, well, we were sort of like in that. There's like a period when alternative comedy first started, and I think sort of, quite rightly, a lot of the stand-ups on the circuit were thinking, look, we're doing this day in, day out. Here, these snotty little posh students coming on stage and sort of instantly getting a TV contract, and obviously there's a legacy of sort of ill feeling about that, and so as a result, this is exactly what happened, and they got an absolute baptism of fire. But after that, I think
That's a good thing. There's nothing more important to a comic than your first death.
Yeah.
No, your last
What
death
was
actually is
yours?
more important. Mine was, I remember it very vividly because I was 18. I was unspeakably cocky, as you can imagine.
I can't imagine that.
And, but imagine I was 18 and I'd done about 10 gigs and they'd all gone really well. Imagine how I was like,
Mark Lamarr in cocky shock.
No, but like a million times more than I am now because there have, of course, over
You're
the years.
pretty
you think, well,
indestructible at that age as well, aren't you?
Absolutely. And I remember it very well because Paul Merton always tells his story. I was on stage at Jongleurs and it almost caused a riot. Dave Cohn was comparing and he really told me off after the show saying you don't wind up an audience, and I thought, no, surely that's what you do. But they'd started to dislike me and they were, I'm sure they were right. I was 18 and useless, but I'd done 10 or so gigs that had gone great, and they were because I was 18. People were like, oh look, he's only young, let him get away with it. But this night they probably thought, well, we've paid money, let's not let him get away with it. He's dreadful. So they booed me off, and I told them what I thought of them, which isn't the way you do it. The way you do it is you sweat and you get scared and you speed up and everything. Well, I didn't know this. All I knew was that I was brilliant because I'd done 10 gigs and they'd gone fine, and they hadn't been like raising the roof. They'd just been, I'd got through them. And Paul Merton said he said he'll never forget this moment because everyone sweats and everyone speeds up. And he said, you didn't do that. You just stood on stage and you stared at them, and the look said, you're wrong. And you walked off, and that was my first death. And I remember it very, very well.
Oh, God.
Have you had any of
Oh,
those?
yeah, no.
Everyone's had it. They're a great
What's
thing
your worst one?
of comedy.
I think...
Is Jo Brand here? We should bring her in on this because there's nothing more fun than your greatest death story.
No, it's just horrendous. The very first one I ever had was being a student. The thing is, when you get heckled when you're doing sketches, there's no way you can get back into it. You can't say, hello, I'm a policeman, and all that sort of thing, and somebody from the audience says, get off, you, and all this sort of stuff, and you can't still pretend you're a policeman once you've sort of had an altercation with somebody in the audience. So with sketches, once you start getting heckled, you're in big trouble. You just go into tailspin after a while. And
Did you ever do improv?
no, I
Because
didn't.
my
Really.
favourite, and it's not even that witty, but when they'd say, and a style to do it in, and when someone said, comedy, I was thought, yes, you've got them. They're screwed. There's nothing they can do now. And it happens every time. I've only seen improv a few times, but someone always goes, comedy. And the old audience sort of goes, yeah, we've heard it before, but it's always a winner. Sorry, Henry, what were you saying?
Oh, yeah, no. Oh, it's Jo Brand.
Hey.
Now, this couldn't be a worse introduction. I'm like, we're talking about our biggest deaths of all time. Where's Jo Brand? Let's bring her in. So I'll tell you what, just while we set up your mic and everything, Joe, I'll play a record, and this one's for you. It's Elvis Costello, because I know you're a big fan, and this is Big Tears. Right, let's explain the scenario now. I'm Mark Lamarr, sitting in for Jonathan Ross for the last next 32 minutes. And what happened today was I rang a load of mates to come in the show, and quite pleasingly, none of them want to leave, which is lovely. But we're going to have a system now where if you want to speak, put your hand up, because otherwise... No, not shut it, because we've got to speak. But I think it's going to have to be a put your hand up
just
system.
to go back to her EastEnders days.
Oh, I thought
Sorry,
she...
it just came out
every
as a
half
bit
an
of
hour she has
Tourette's.
to go, shut it.
I'm not sure if she was talking to herself or me. I think it might have been me. Anyway, Henry Naylor's still here, Tamsin Outhwaite's still here, Mark Steele's still here, and we've been joined by the wonderful Jo Brand. So thanks for coming in, Jo.
Hello, Mark.
Jo doesn't have to put her hand up because she's the last guest in, so she can do whatever she wants.
So what's the worst gig you ever do?
The one I remember is that one in Loughborough with you. Do you remember where that sort of very scary psychopath started threatening to kill me?
Oh, God, yeah.
And I wanted
That's
to hit
a bad
him.
gig, isn't it?
That is quite a bad gig. And I wanted to hit him with a bottle, and you stopped me, which is...
Hey, that's
yes,
not
I
me.
know, I
You
know.
pacifist.
He did. He said, "Don't hit that man with a bottle. It won't do your career any good."
Why did he want to kill you?
Oh, because he was heckling me, and I put him down, you know, and all his mates laughed.
I think
at him.
if there were three
Bravado.
comics in a room that that could wind an audience up, they're all
is
in
it
this
us?
show. Hey, Jo, I didn't see this thing, and I, that's the thing about showbiz, and you're all my showbiz friends, meaning I don't see much of you socially. But when it comes to something like this, hooray! But I often don't get a chance to see all the things that my friends are in. Tamsin berated me for quite some time about it earlier on, and I missed your Brain of Britain thing that you did recently.
Oh yes, Test the Nation.
And what exactly was that?
Well, it was an interactive quiz which was on BBC One for a couple of hours just before Christmas, where you were asked, I think, 70 questions about the news over the last year. And they had kind of groups of people of different professions, if you can call it that, in the studio, from cab drivers to rugby players to teenagers to their parents. And, of course, they had a little celebrity enclosure, because they always have one, because they just think, well, we'll put celebrities there and we'll humiliate them by finding out just how thick they all are. And
You
we
won.
were actually, the celebrities won the whole thing. They beat like the rugby players and the cabbies and the hairdressers.
Didn't you feel guilty?
Why? What about being reading the newspaper?
No, but
beating the hairdressers.
No, but there must have been some of the celebrities there that you thought, I'm in this gang with these people I don't really want, and I hope the taxi drivers or the hairdressers win. And was there none of that?
I wouldn't have minded the hairdressers winning, but I would rather the hairdressers had just done my hair, really.
Was
or the
Fred
cabbies
Housego there, though?
No, he wasn't. No.
Oh, well, there
one
you
with
go.
him there.
Things would have changed there.
Oh, well,
That
that's
was
their
proper
star
Cockney
player.
pride. That was real Cockney pride there, wasn't it? With Chaz and Dave on. It really was.
Speaking of which, that's the last time I saw you at that do, wasn't it? At,
Wasn't that a fantastic
The
night?
Hootenanny.
We were talking about that last week.
Yes.
That was a lovely end of the year. I had my arm around Miss Dynamite swaying to Hi Ho Silver Lining. And it was.
And I tried to get in a barrel with Chaz and Dave, but
Did you?
to no avail. No, you know Vic Reeves got in a barrel
Yeah.
at the end. Well, I wanted to proposition Chaz and Dave to get in with me, but I couldn't find them.
There was a fantastic moment where they, because Chaz and Dave were on, and they hired a load of pearly kings and queens to do some dancing, but they were of course outsmarted by the proper old cockneys in the audience who just got up and into their dance space and did the sort of mad old drunk woman dancing.
Oh, no, that was me. I was doing that.
There wasn't. Do you remember that woman who had like the silver tinsel, and it was like a Christmas version of toilet paper attached to her shoe, but for a good 10 minutes to the sideboard song, and she was like doing. I obviously can't do it on radio, but she was doing mad old drunk woman dancing, but with a long string of tinsel. Then
She's one of the sort of women who tells a filthy joke and then goes, "Wah!"
that you know her,
Yeah.
you know her ilk. And then she went over to Solomon Burke, this big, grand, fantastic soul
fantastic
singer.
man.
Wasn't he amazing? He had a big ceremonial stick. It was an enormous thing. And she went over and he was sat there, grand and eloquent, just in sitting there. And she went and grabbed it off him and just thought. I think she thought, I can do some stuff with this stick. And so she just did mad, drunken, old bag dancing with tinsel on her shirt and this big African ceremonial stick.
Was she a guest on the show?
She was just a drunk.
Right.
But she was lovely. I met her because she really did make the night something special, because I was in agony. As soon as I could breathe again, I told her how much she'd made the evening for me.
Oh, that's reminded me of probably my worst gig, actually. It was in Edinburgh. I didn't have a very good year one
Which
year in
hasn't Dave
Edinburgh.
on?
No, well, sort
It
of.
wasn't that
There is a
gig
link.
where we were doing a benefit and I was on last after you and you were meant to do 10 minutes and you did an hour and a half, was it?
Hold on.
There was a
but it hasn't rankled. Joe doesn't really remember that gig.
I can't remember.
Go on, go for
My
it.
audience won't let me go. What can I do? So I was at Edinburgh.
Sometimes it takes them that long to finish a joke. You know, when they're shouting.
It was the worst room there in Edinburgh. And I was on something like midnight, and there was all sorts of things weren't right about this. And one of the things was that the door. There was a door to one side that just rattled all the way through, chuck, chuck, chung, chung, ching sort of noise. And on the very last night, as if sort of pre-planned by some deity, on the very last night, and it's sort of ticking along, and I'm having a bit of a rant about the old Edinburgh experience and so on to the audience. It's sort of going all right, I don't know, I can't really remember. But then the door rattled, there must have been a special sort of Scottish gust of wind. The door flew open altogether, and it exposed the sort of audience to the street. There was the street just outside, and there were these two drunk blokes outside, and they sort of looked a bit bemused at me, and I looked at them, and they came in, and they've got their tins of special brew, and I said, "You're right, this is a gig, you're on stage now." And that was the sort of, that seemed to cap the whole experience.
What, and they stayed in for an hour and a half?
Yeah, they did an hour and a half.
Those sort of
All these stories are going to become one
supposed to be
story,
10
aren't they?
minutes.
Like the worst gig we all did together at the same time.
With the drunk woman.
Those
Yeah,
ones
Darcy
where
and
you're
Chaz and Dave.
exposed to the public, though, like that. Because there's a jazz cafe in Camden. They used to have comedy, and you're up on the stage, and it was a completely, like, glass frontage next to a bus stop. So you're there up on the stage doing your jokes, and everyone at the bus stop is going, "Bleh," kind of flicking the V's at you. It's just... And that didn't last very long, that gig,
I bet you're just thinking,
surprisingly.
please, 133, arrive.
There's a story you might have told me this, Mark. You were certainly there when someone told us about in Edinburgh. There's a place called the Assembly Rooms that has got 6 or 7 venues in the same place, and halfway through all the shows, because they pretty much start, they all start on the hour or whatever. There was a fire alarm, so all the audience had to. Did you tell me this story?
Yeah.
All the audience had to file out and stand in a line, and it might have been maybe your show or various other people. It might have been Rory, and so there's a sign saying Rory Bremner, and the audience for that particular show would stand and wait for the show to resume. And one of the particular performers, his show maybe wasn't all it should have been. And so when everyone started chatting, and oh, how's your show? Oh, pretty good. How's yours? Not so good. And by the time they all went back in, they'd all filed into other shows, and it ended up...
There's only about 20 people left in this one particular
and they'd all just sort of realised, oh, well, we haven't paid, but this show's pretty stinky. And, we can't name him, but Simon Fanshawe.
Oh, do you know, but the worst ever Edinburgh show I ever had, there was a show on before us. There was a guy...
I'll have to wait.
Well,
I started playing a record, you haven't got any headphones on, you wouldn't have known.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, tell us in a minute.
All right,
We're ruining
I'll be
a beautiful moment. This is Robert Wyatt.
I shall return.
That's quite good.
Robert Wyatt with shipbuilding. And it is, we're all just sitting reminiscing about awful times in showbiz. But
Joe, you just repeat that sentence you said just as that record ended?
I had a gig once where a patient that I used to know from work when I was a psychiatric nurse turned up in the audience naked with a mobile phone.
No.
But the great thing about it was at the ICA, and everyone thought that was perfectly normal. 'Cause you know what the ICA is like, so arty.
The
they
audience
thought.
going, oh, not again. We've
Obviously
seen it done.
someone who works here, you know.
There's a friend of mine, and the best people you can ever know, the best stories you can ever hear, is a doctor in a VD clinic.
Oh, they
And
are
a
good.
lot of great stories. But she told me one day, and of course people that are in there, they're a bit shifty, they're a bit embarrassed, they don't want to look up, they don't want to see people and whatever. She said one day, it was next to a psychiatric unit, one day all these blokes are sitting, I'm presuming it's predominantly blokes, I don't know why, but they're all sort of sat there like, oh God, I've got to go through this awful thing, and God knows what's going to happen to me, and I shouldn't be here in the first place, and I'm embarrassed. And a woman dressed as a Spanish dancer ran in, did a performance, and gave them a big Hispanic kiss, and they all came in to have their tests with a big old Spanish lipstick mark on their face. And it's such a lovely scenario for a play. But Henry earlier on said he's got the worst ever death.
No, well, no. Actually, talking about doctors and gigs and stuff, I had a fantastic one recently in the West End. I think it was a Nicholas Lyndhurst play. Have you heard this one? And apparently, like Nicholas Lyndhurst was doing this play, and apparently it was a very boring play. And apparently, halfway through the play, this bloke stood up in the audience and said, "Is there a doctor in the house?" And there's a big hush went across the audience. Everybody started turning around and said, "Is there a doctor in the house?" And this doctor stood up and went, yeah. And he said, "Oh, doctor, do you think this is rubbish as well?"
Oh no, that's going to ruin every theatre performance by anyone who listens to this show from this day onward, isn't it? Because that's got to be worth doing.
Oh, yeah,
even if you're enjoying it.
So, Tamsin, you had any of them?
What's
Anything
that?
like that?
Yeah, you've
in
done
theatre,
and
yeah.
stuff.
No, but we've had terrible corpsing moments, you know, where you're sweating, thinking, someone please talk, someone's dried, you know. Up in Scarborough, an Eightbourne theatre. I was doing an Eightbourne play. Eightbourne had directed it, and it was my first professional play. And I'd come out of college and done a lot of musicals, and I hadn't done any plays. And it was a comedy, but I was playing this role who was mute for the first, 10 minutes or so, and she was just chewing and reading. The other characters were all standing there. It was like Janet Dibley, Tyler Butterworth, some really, really classy actors. Martin Ball, Paul Raffield.
Yeah, you notice none of us have nodded like we classy actors.
Well, that's what happens when you talk about comedians.
We only
you
watch
see.
Redcap. We don't know about these people.
And basically, Eightbourne had this thing during this play. It was meant to be an uncomfortable silence. So everyone had to keep this silence going for as long as possible. And he would always say, that silence was great, leave it another 10 seconds. Be brave, be really, really bold, don't come in. But you'd be cringing, sitting there shaking, thinking, this is going on too long, the audience think we've dried. So he would say, make them think we've dried. So I was sitting everyone else is standing up, and this silence is going on for ages. I know it's not my line, and it's going on forever. So I look up, and we're in the round in Scarborough. No one can even turn away, and they're all standing there, blatantly shoulder shaking, like this. Just, and I sit there, and I just pull, and as I pulled my magazine over my head, it felt like it went on for another 10 minutes after that. But when it finished, I was sweating. All my clothes under my arms, my face was dripping, and that fear is horrible. I just hate that fear of what the unknown of what now. Yeah, but you guys do it on your own. I just, wait for someone else to talk.
Yeah, but then if something screws up, you go, oh, well, that didn't work out, which you can't do. This is exactly what you were saying. You
just can't come out the character.
As a sketch performer. But I still want to hear your worst death.
This is how naive I was when I first started. When I was 16, I did a school sort of summer review thing, and I was all doing sketches and stuff. It was ever so jolly and very lovely.
Were you born in a trunk? When you're 16, you did a school review?
Yeah, we're doing all that. But we kind of thought, well, I'd quite like to do this professionally, doing a bit of comedy. And me and my mate were in this nightclub, and my mate who I did sketches with said to the nightclub manager, oh, well, we'd like to do comedy. He said, comedy, great idea, we'll stick you on tonight. And this is how naive I was. I thought, great, this would be fantastic.
It's very bad.
Oh, do you know? And literally in the middle of this nightclub, it's sort of like the manager...
16.
The manager of the nightclub went, ladies and gentlemen, please stop dancing, please stop dancing. And there's all these people going, what? And they were all dancing to, Dead or Alive or whatever, and they all sort of cleared off the dance floor and said, right, there's a couple of lads at the local posh school, they want to do a bit of comedy. Let's see how they go on. And it was just unbelievable. And the worst thing was, there was this girl I used to get the school bus with, and she knew I fancied this other girl on the bus, and she was just heckling me. Literally walked on stage, she said, oh, hey, I bet Fiona, she'd like to see you doing this. And, literally, the whole audience, it was the worst death you can imagine.
No, I can imagine, yeah, that is... I mean, it's hard enough to talk to girls when you're 16 anyway. That's the only story I've ever heard that actually had a death rattle in it somewhere. There was a complete expiration.
A similar one in Norwich. I did this sort of gig in Norwich. There was about 3 or 4 of us. And we did sort of 15 minutes each, and it was a little theatre. It was about 1985 time. And it went all right, And so the bloke said, who ran this little theatre, he said, well, come back, come back. They've got something where I think you'd be great for. And he rang us up a couple of weeks later, and he said, yeah, come up. He said, because we're having a music festival, and it'd be great to have a bit of comedy in the middle, a bit of a change. And there was a band called Fuzzbox that were had a hit single, I think, around about that time, and they were headlining, and been a sort of music festival in this little local theatre, and they were quite a big act. So everyone was there, and everyone was about 17 when 17-year-olds used to drink Thunderbird wine, and everyone was completely parallel, being sick over each other and all that sort of thing. And it's got about an hour too late. And the blokes come on, and everyone's going, Fuzzbox, the whole place, Fuzzbox, 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 Fuzzbox. And the blokes come on and said, right, we've got Fuzzbox coming on in a moment, but anyway, we've got a bit of comedy for you now. So anyway, he's a bit new, but I'm sure you'll really like him, Matt Steele. And I've come on, and of course, you've never seen people. It was almost a bit of a fascinating case study of anger. They're just that you could see everyone veins to go, anger, anger. And there was a bit of me that thought, this is quite, from an anthropological point of view, this is quite fascinating. And a shoe came flying and all that. And I must have been on, and I'd like a fool, any normal, sane person would have just gone, I'm going. But you sort of think, oh, I'll try me really good joke that I normally finish with and see if that wins them over. Like they're going to go, I tell you what, never mind Fuzzbox, what's that? Of course not. So I lasted probably 10 horrible seconds. And the thing I do really remember is the bloke who'd introduced me and who got me to go up there afterwards just completely bemused. He's going, I can't understand it, mate. And then as he was talking, he said, oh, hang on, you've got a bit of gob in your hair. I better get And that was...
same thing, supporting bands always the worst. I did 2 gigs with Doctor and the Medics, and it was just about when they were sort of big, and it was like, if you do well on these 2 gigs, you can do the tour. So, and I just starting out, the first gig, rock gigs, you're dead anyway. I went on just a hail of cans. I didn't even speak. A hail of cans, which of course I started to pick them up and throw them back at the audience, which I learn now, very unprofessional thing to do, because you might hit the wrong person. So literally, I didn't say a word at this gig. That was my first one. I was thinking, well, I hope the second one goes really well and I can do this tour. Second one, and they weren't listening. I did about 8 minutes, 10 minutes, something like that. But just as I got to near the end, a bloke, I heard him distinctly say, I've had enough of this. Jumped on stage and beat the life out of me. And that was... That's your showbiz, Naylor. Never mind Fiona not fancying you. This is
Those are the
Aretha
difficult
Franklin.
ones when you get beaten to a pulp.
That's a tough. That was Aretha Franklin with Elusive Butterfly. I'm Mark Lamarr and Henry Naylor, Tamsin Outhwaite. I'm just like Uncle Tom Goblin as well. Mark Steele and Jo Brand are all with me, so you can try and identify the voices as we all chat over each other with showbiz reminiscences, which is what we're doing today. Somehow it has evolved into that, and that's what it is. There was one I was going to tell about anyway before we got into all this thing. Me and Jo were on tour, 12 years ago or something.
Was it that long?
It might have even been longer than that. We were in a hotel in Birmingham, and in those days we used to keep very late nights.
Yes.
Like probably 4 or 5 in the morning. That was
That's a
pretty
quaint
average.
phrase. Oh, we kept very late nights.
Oh, we did.
Well, I still do, but Jo's got kids, and I'm sure.
No, it's the
so I
quaintness
keep
of
very
the
late
way it
nights
was
as
phrased.
well.
So we decided, rather than go to bed, because we wouldn't be sleeping anyway, to sit up and play cards in the foyer of this hotel. And this, when I say hotel, that's probably overstating the mark.
It is, because hadn't we just been moved to that hotel after a certain comic had
thrown a television out of the window.
Thrown a telly out of the window of the nice hotel.
Oh, name.
Subsequently,
you wouldn't have heard of it.
incognito.
But he did it in a very good way, though, because he worked out how much it would cost him, and he thought it seems to be worth it. It wasn't just like, right, I'm going to do it. He sat in the bar and saying, I'd love to throw a telly out of a window. Let's see how that would be. And people going, yeah, whatever. They all go to bed. 5 minutes later, a big crash. Got arrested, and fair play, the judge threw it out of court because it was... I mean, he really did have his chequebook ready and said, that's all right, I'll pay for it. I just wanted to... But what he didn't realise is that with cable nowadays, it meant all the televisions in the hotel were all ripped
Doesn't
out.
that spoil it a bit when you get your chequebook out and offer to pay for it? That's not
Yeah,
quite...
but anyway, that was the thing.
That was the new comedy, you
That's the way
see.
comedians-
So anyway, that means we were in this
It's not
hotel because
So-
we've been barred from the nice one.
We were in this hotel, and there were signs everywhere saying 24-hour service, which is very relevant. So we sat there, and 2 or 3 blokes, the night porter and a couple of other blokes who were working there, just sat near us drinking tea and stuff. And we were sitting playing cards all night, and about, I don't know, 1 o'clock, we said, can we have a cup of tea? Yeah, of course. So they went and got a cup of tea, we carried on playing cards. About 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, but bear in mind, they're sat 20 yards away from us all night anyway. About 4 o'clock, we said, can we have another pot of tea? Knowing they had nothing else to do, they'd been sat there watching us, and they went, nah, it's a bit late now. And we said, well, how can it be too late? You're not doing anything. And we just want a cup of tea. Nah, you can't really have a cup of tea now. In that way of like, we know you can, but I'm going to make out some way you can't. And I said, look, there's a sign there, 24-hour service. And he went, yeah, but there's a limit. And we had to go to bed. And that was the end of the card game. But even without there's a limit, they were sat watching us all night doing nothing. No, you can't really. There's not really. Do you remember that time when we had that big bugbear about people not letting us use their toilets?
Oh, yeah.
And I was in a record shop recently where they all knew me. I go in there all the time, and I said, and then there was a door open which I'd never seen before, showing the toilet, and I wanted to go, and I said, can I use your toilet? You know, they knew me, and he said, nah, there's one up the road. And I said, yeah, but there's one right there. And he went, well, there's not really.
There was a pub in the Charing Cross Road called the Moon Under Stars or something. and buried under rubble. It ought to be
Going
called.
underwater, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I went in there with my lad, and they wouldn't let him. I said, "Just come and use the toilet," and he said, "Oh, it's for customers only," and all that sort of thing. Oh, no kids, big, huge, great Scottish boat, and he stood there like a picket, in front of this door. No kids, I said, "Just wants to go to the toilet," "No, he's not coming here. You send us in," all this sort of thing. So,
Can I just say, the bloke that picked me up today, he said, "Can I use your toilet?"
and did you let him in?
Yes, I did.
What, you mean the driver?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's just inhumane to not let anyone use a toilet at any
pretty
time.
You
bad,
know what
isn't
they're
it?
going through. It's not like you don't know.
Well, you also know other people are using it for the same thing. It's not like I'm going to do the stuff in there that is done in there. This isn't. I'm not saying can I come and wee on your carpet. I'm saying I want to go to the toilet. You've got an actual device used for that business.
Well,
anyway.
they never is. I go,
Yeah.
yeah, but you don't know these days. Someone might come in, they might have a drill down there, start putting all holes all over the place. You never know. Bust
As long
the
as they haven't got a
system.
mouthful of. You're all right.
He's the most petty person of 2002 I come across. There was
What, worse than the bloke with the skip and the CCTV?
Well, try me. He's it's central London. And
knows he's got something good now.
I'm sitting there, and just in the corner of my own there with little newspapers. I was doing a bit of work or something. And suddenly the guy, Italian bloke who runs it, he gets very, very animated and very, very cross, and he's more agitated. And there's 2 or 3 people around him working, saying, "Well, look, calm down about this." And he's getting more. There's no calming, and he's getting more angry. And he keeps saying, "They think I'm charity. They just come in, they thieve, they just rob." And he's getting very, very angry. And then I could see that just outside on the pavement there were 2 people, bloke and a woman, stood there together. And this was the subject of his anger and his wrath. And in the end, he said, "Right," he says, I'm going out there. They just think they can come in here and rob me, just rob me like that. They think I'm a charity. And he goes out there and he says, "Those serviettes cost me money." And he snatches about 4 serviettes back. And what's happened? The woman's come in and just taken 4 serviettes off the counter. And he says, "These are the money. It's got the money. You think of charity." And so eventually, after all this screaming, the bloke's laughing. The girl gets angry. She comes in. She says, "Do you want me to pay for him?" And she gets a penny out and she chucks the penny. And,
now that is rude.
and
The penny.
Well, but then he stood there doing all that come here, sort of, you know this from EastEnders, come here, who's except in Italian.
We'd know this as well from gigs.
Yeah.
You only know that from the Easter.
And then he was being so loud that eventually I said, "Oh, calm down, mate." Yes, I said, "To be fair, I don't think I've ever seen anyone get so angry about a serviette." And he started on me. "What's he got to do with you? What's he got?" So, I wonder if he's still maybe.
It's almost like I'm not being petty. They're my serviettes. We're running right to the end of the programme. I have to play another track. We'll have another minute or so chat. But I want to recommend lots of things. All the things that people in this room are doing, because you're all my lovely showbiz chums that I don't see socially. So, Henry, when's the put-out section coming back on?
July, I think.
OK, well, we'll probably talk about it before then. How are you going to fill the rest of the time?
I'm writing a play at the minute.
Oh, okay.
Old love. Yeah.
Tamsin's Red Cap is on... that sounds like
Starts on
some sort of
Tuesday.
sexual pun there. Red Cap starts on Tuesday. It's at 8 o'clock on...
9 o'clock,
9
Tuesday
o'clock.
night for 6 weeks.
On what
and
channel?
then
On the channel
BBC One.
And Joe, what are you up to?
I'm starring in a BBC thing. I'm play a military policeman in Holland.
No, it's
called-
been done.
It's called Dutch Cat.
We've done that.
She only came in...
Tamsin, I'm
She only
so
came in-
sorry.
I want to...
No, that was our nickname for the production while we were
hold on
What
a
you were
second.
doing when this worst gig happened?
Hold on a second. Let's thank Rory. It really wasn't that good. Just fall apart with that. It was nice because you played
No wonder they got so
I made an
outraged.
effort.
People.
Yeah, you did. Rory
Thank
Bremner,
you.
who was in earlier on, his show's on tomorrow night. I firmly recommend the John Monson book I was talking about.
I'm writing
And the
a
other
book.
the other thing I want to recommend is I spent my Christmas day, like very few people in Britain, listening to some gospel and worshipping Jesus, only because there's a fantastic Sam Cooke box set's come out and it's got this track on, and that's where we'll finish the show. This is called He'll Welcome Me. It was a treat for me on Christmas Day. It's a treat for me today. That was He'll Welcome Me from Sam Cooke. I want to thank all today's guests, Rory Bremner, Henry Naylor, Tamsin Outhwaite, Jo Brand and Mark Steele. Next week on the show, Jonathan's back, of course, and his guest will be Paul Whitehouse. And I've written down Phil Collins, but I mean Pauline, but from a distance. It would be the same thing, wouldn't it? 88 to 91 FM, this is Radio 2 from the BBC.